lots of new territory coming into the Union, and the question of whether slavery will expand into that territory. The territory in discussion is the upper area, the red in the middle, and the gray. The green is predominantly what is Mexico today. Everything above it that's red and gray used to be Mexico. Mexico is one of the 10 largest continuous empires in history. Mexico achieves independence from Spain in 1821, and so all of this territory becomes Mexico, basically. Now, shortly thereafter, you have Americans, white Americans, immigrating into Mexico, a part of Mexico called Texas. They cross the border from the United States into Mexico, settle in Texas. This is something that the Mexican government, Mexican people don't really have a problem with. There are a couple of issues, though. One, a lot of these Americans, white American immigrants in Mexico, are bringing slaves with them. Slavery has been outlawed by Mexico in 1829. They're independent in 1821. Slavery is outlawed in 1829. In the 1830s, all these white Americans coming in, bringing slaves, breaking the law. White Americans immigrating into Mexico, breaking the law. Sounds interesting. This is hilarious. So what happens is a conflict over the slaves, over too much land being acquired, issues with whether they're paying taxes on the land, various things. And the Mexican government is not it's not very effective at this point. You have a General Santa Anna who's sort of status as a military leader exclusively in some sort of regional leader. It's sort of a not the best situation, not the most cohesive situation. But Santa Anna deals with these settlers at a place called the Alamo. You've all heard of the Alamo, probably remember the Alamo, where he basically, there's these folks from America who are breaking the law in Mexico, refusing to, either start obeying the law or leave. Decided to take up arms and go to war, have a conflict with Mexico. Santa Anna answers that call and surrounds them at the Alamo and kills a bunch of people, basically. But eventually, enough of these folks from America, led by Sam Houston, they organize militias, they organize some sort of military force, and they defeat Santa Anna. They're able to basically break off this chunk of Texas where the flag is. Right? This is the original Texas that becomes a part of the United States in 1845. Right? But for 9 years, beginning in 1836, it is the Lone Star Republic, the Republic of Texas. It's its own country. And then it's annexed by the United States. Right? A similar situation is going to happen in Hawaii when you take 17B in the 1890s. So, all of this revolves around this idea. Well, so Texas is annexed in 1845, but wanting to extend the border of Texas to include where the present day border, this red area, also eyeing California's fertile valley, the Central Valley, vital coastal area where you can, where from that point Asia is right across an ocean, massive, and you have industrialization, you have an economy that's becoming more global, and the need for new markets. If you mass produce goods, you need to find new markets for those goods. And so this territory is seen as very vital to U.S. business interests and strategic interests, yada, yada, yada. Also, this idea of manifest destiny, the phrase manifest destiny has come about. The idea that, white people are going to come over to America, push brown and, push people who are not white off of their land, and justify it because they're chosen by God or because they are using the land better. That's something that's basically, not invented in the 1840s. But this idea of manifest destiny, a specific term, which, is this belief that territorial expansion is proof of the innate superiority of the Anglo-Saxon race, right? Anglo-Saxon, English people. So, yeah. So basically, we are. Yeah, that makes sense. So this really relates to ethnic nationalism. I'm sorry, some fucking kids was looking at me and distracting me. Little punks. Anyways, I just cursed. I'm sorry. Let's continue. So basically, wanting to continue expanding westward, so that the United States occupies the entire continent. The United States provokes border hostility. They walk into this red area, which Mexico claims is still a part of Mexico. Fighting ensues, and you have a war with Mexico, the Mexican-American War, also known as the Mexican War. A footnote in most Americans' historical memory. Mexicans, however, regard the war as a central event of their national history and a source of continued resentment. Why continued resentment? Because they lost a third of their territory in this war. This is something that you will see monuments for all over Mexico City, because Mexico City is going to be invaded and occupied eventually, not by Zachary Taylor here. Zachary Taylor is going to be in the northern part of Mexico, in this border area with Texas, with Santa Ana, for a while, but eventually another army under the leadership of Winfield Scott is going to land in Veracruz, march into Mexico City, and occupy it in September of 1847. And then, of course, you have diplomatic officials who go in and negotiate a treaty, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, in which Mexico surrenders Utah, Colorado, most of New Mexico, most of Arizona, part of Wyoming, roughly 5 present-day states in the United States. I'm sorry, California, also California, Nevada, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, part of Wyoming, right? And then there's this sort of southern part of Arizona and New Mexico that's purchased later. It's called the Gadsden Purchase. A huge amount of territory, and also almost a lot of it is below the Mason-Dixon line, which means that technically, should slavery be allowed to exist there? Should we extend the Mason-Dixon line from the Louisiana Purchase? David Wilmot, a congressman, says no. He writes the Wilmot Proviso down here, which says no slavery in any of this new territory. No slavery at all, right? Slavery where it exists in the southern states that already exist, that's fine for now, but they do not get to expand. This is not something that makes slave states and slave owners happy, because they need to expand, in order to maintain, in order to have a federal government where there's Congress, where there's a Senate and the House that have slave representatives of slave states in equal proportion, or relatively equal proportion. And also, yeah. So really I'm not going to get into this argument about some people say, like, by the time the Civil War started, slavery was dying out. They try to argue this. I've mentioned this in class. They try to distance slavery from the Civil War, and it's an inaccurate thing. So this is an interesting war here. So the Wilmot Proviso is rejected. What we get out of this war, in order to deal with slavery, is the Compromise of 1850. The Compromise of 1850. And in that, oh, you know what? I had some war sound effects. Let's listen to some war sound effects. Is it? I can't hear it. Where's the sound? Oh, you know why? Because I muted it. Oh my goodness. This is going to take too much time. You know what? I don't care, because I want sound, darn it. Okay, that just upsets me. There we go. There we go. So now let's get you present. Now let's get some sound effects. How about that? Here we go. Oh, look, it's that. Combat. Yay. Whatever. Okay, I shouldn't trivialize it. That's not trivializing it. That's so. In this war, though, that's the area right there: California, Nevada, Colorado, all of Utah, all of Nevada, all of California, a little bit of Wyoming, some of Colorado, some of New Mexico, most of Arizona, and it was purchased 500,000 square miles. I forget how much they paid for it. It was similar to the Louisiana Purchase. They paid maybe, a little more because it was also nearly 50 years later, but a lot of land. And of course, there are a lot of people there. There is a large indigenous population, visible indigenous populations still, Spanish people, peninsulares, people from Spain born, but there's also this huge population of Mexicans or Mexicans in California known as Californios. A population of people whose ancestors are both indigenous and Spanish, who speak Spanish, right? So this now all of a sudden, the United States is beginning to incorporate territory where there are people speaking Spanish, right? The Spanish is, I believe, it's the second largest language in the world. It's second only to Mandarin, right? 406 million people speak Spanish. It's one of 6 official UN languages. I believe it's English, Japanese, Mandarin, French. I don't know about Japanese. Take that back. French. 17% of the U.S. population, that is not Mexican. 17% of the U.S. population is Spanish-speaking or Latino. The classification on census is Hispanic. Most folks in California don't like being called Hispanic. Latino is also sort of a general term. It's complicated though because you can't really say Mexican because I know a lot of people who are, from El Salvador or Guatemala or have one parent from Mexico, one parent from El Salvador. So to say they're Chicano or Mexican is not really taking in their whole story. 53 million people from Spanish-speaking countries though in the United States legally or, documented. There are, I'm not sure how many undocumented Spanish-speaking people, but that would add to that list. So this is this whole new group, a very relevant group, a group whose demographic is growing each election. They're becoming an influential group in presidential elections. And we're going to listen to a song. We're going to listen to a corny country song from the 70s. Yeah. The second part's in Spanish. I'm going to make you do this because I really want to torture you right now. Look at that hair. Look at that mustache. Looking good, Mr. Cotter. If he brings you happiness. I'm going to sing along. Then I wish you all the best. It's your happiness that matters most of all. Oh, this is such a beautiful song. But if you ever if the teardrops ever start, I'll be there before the next teardrop falls. Okay, man, I can just imagine the looks on your faces right now. So let's get back to the thing here. Stop messing with me, mouse. Oh my goodness, we can't get out of this now. Okay. How do we get out of this? Holy cow. Here we go. So the Wilmot Proviso is rejected. You know what? Let's stop there. I'm going to get to this part in a separate office hours because this is exhausting. So we're going to stop this. And yeah, to be continued.